All right, good afternoon. Hi, Lyndall here with Marshfield Old School Times again. It's great to be back today on a nice, beautiful Saturday afternoon, and I've got a good friend here that's been around Marshfield all of his life, Keith Stewart. Welcome.
Thank you, Lyndall.
You
Thank you.
betcha. I went to
Glad to be here.
school with Keith's sister Brenda. I think we spent all 12 years together,
Yeah.
and so great family, longtime Webster County family. We're going to hear a little bit more about that. 2 weeks from tonight is Reunion Fest, Marshfield Reunion Fest, and that's our big event here at the community center that we like to be a part of. 13 years now. This will be our 13th year, and we've got four great bands. We're going to hear more about them here in a minute as well. Everything will start about 5 o'clock. Gates will probably open around 4:45, and it's going to be a fun night. Hope you can come. You do not have to be an alumni of Marshfield. That's the one thing that we've been trying to emphasize. It's a gathering of friends and family, and the more the merrier. So had a great turnout last year after the COVID years, which were down a little bit. Last year was a great turnout. Had about 350 to 400 people here, and it was a great time. So we know we're gonna have a good time this year with the bands that we have. All of them have MHS grads in them. And with that, Keith, we're just gonna get started here right off the bat, and we're gonna learn when you came to America.
I've been here for a while. Actually, longer than, I start thinking about how old I am now, but every day I'm
Yeah.
reminded of that. Born in 1963, class of 81, grew up here in Marshfield. Uh, I think people still kind of are amazed in this day and age that I still, uh, a lot of people still are in Marshfield that have grown up here. It's like kind of what keeps you here. Um, I've always just said that Marshfield's a great place to grow up, great place to raise a family. I've told a lot of people, you know, Marshfield is not Mayberry, but you can see Mayberry from there.
Yeah,
Because
that's right.
it really, especially back when we were kids.
When we were kids
Yeah,
growing up.
there was just so many things, so many, and obviously I'm sure there's a lot of other small towns that are that way too. But we had such a broad community involvement type
Everybody
environment.
kind of knew
They
everybody,
did,
and
they did.
children and moms and dads raised kids sort of together.
Hmm.
You visited
Oh yeah.
kids down the street were over, played ball,
Hmm.
whatever you did.
Hmm.
And so tell us about your parents and where you grew up.
So my mom and dad, they were both originally from the Portland area.
Okay.
Dad was in. It's kind of funny. Dad was in the Air Force during the Korean War, and they got married. I guess it was last year that he was in the service, and he was actually stationed in Edwards Air Force Base in California. And they got married, and then immediately moved to the Mojave Desert. So my mom really had maybe only been out of the state once, so it was quite a culture shock for her to,
Yeah.
basically be on a military base at that time. But they lived there, for about a year, which a lot of the stories that he had was it was a cool time, I guess, to be there. It was kind of toward the end of the Korean War. But that was also like, that was the main testing base for like Air Force and a lot of commercial. Chuck Yeager, that was when he broke the
Hmm.
sound barrier,
Hmm.
was when Dad was stationed there, So
A lot of the early astronauts did a lot of
yes,
training out
yes.
there.
Yeah, it was just, he said it was a cool time. He said they always kind of laughed at Chuck Yeager, even though he broke the sound barrier. I think it was in X-15 or something like that. He always drove around base on a Model A, and most all the other jet guys were either like in a Corvette or a
Hmm.
T-Bird, and they kind of questioned him about that. And he said, when I'm up there, I'm going fast enough. It's kind of nice to slow down when I get back on the ground.
Right.
So he
Yeah.
had some cool stories. But then they moved back to Missouri, and actually Dad was working for kind of like, I think it was Fraser. It was like a construction line crew, and then he got on at Show Me Power. He worked for Show Me for 34, 35
Yeah.
years,
Long time.
so a long time. And then, of course, Mom was mostly a homemaker.
Hmm.
She did eventually end up working out a little bit. I think she worked actually kind of part-time for Melba Young at the Tot Shop for a
Oh
while.
yeah.
They're kind of related cousins.
Okay.
And
What was
then
your mother's maiden name?
McMillan.
McMillan. Okay.
Yeah. So she was actually, Mom was the youngest of seven, and their whole family was, and that's kind of like, I guess, how it reflects on me as well. Their whole family was very music oriented, and Mom being the baby, uh, Mom never learned to play, by note. Everything she played was by ear, whether it was guitar or piano or whatever. We always laughed and said if there was anything that had strings on it, Mom could get a tune out of it because her father was a fiddle player,
Oh, really?
and had played in several like old fiddler contests, like
Yeah.
at the Shrine Mosque and stuff like that. So Mom played a little fiddle, a little mandolin. She laughed and said that her claim to fame was that she showed Justin David or Justin Bertaldi his first chords on a mandolin. She goes, he took that and ran with it,
Yeah.
But she was always proud to say that she
pretty
did
neat
that.
thing to be able to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we lived out on.
So did you say, were they from Portland too? That her family was from
Yeah,
Portland area?
yeah.
So did your mother and dad know each other growing up?
They did, and it was kind of one of those deals. I mean, so Dad was 2 years older than Mom, but
They both went to Portland High School, I
yeah.
assume.
Actually, Mom ended up I think her senior year, she went to Marshfield. I don't know how that really worked. Mom's grade school. Now, Dad did, and I'll kind of give you a little background on that. But Mom's grade school was oh gosh, Crown.
Crown, yeah.
That's
Down
where
by
she
James
went.
River.
Yeah, that's where she went. And then I don't know how that worked that year, but she ended up coming to Marshfield, I
Yeah.
think her senior year. Dad, like I said, was primarily with my grandfather's work. He actually was a machinist, and he worked a lot of times for either General Electric or Westinghouse. So they might only live in a town for like a year or two at a time, and they didn't really like moving the kids around that much. So actually, my great grandparents almost raised my uncle and my dad. But I remember Dad actually when he was in high school. They were living in Stockton, California at that time. So they would, like I said, so it was kind of, Dad was kind of moved around quite a bit.
But that Stewart's an old family name
Oh,
in
yeah.
Portland.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We actually have a Steward cemetery
Yeah.
it's kind of out that direction too. But, so yeah, it's, they kind of, like I said, they had known each other kind of their whole lives, but then he would be gone, through their teen years.
Sure.
And so they kind of reconnected and then got married. But, so they actually ended up buying, I think I was 6 months old, and Dad got almost show me, and they bought a farm out on West 38. Actually, it's at 38 and Sand Springs Road. According to Betty Herman, I think just the history of the house, it was, a framed house, 2-story, but the house was built somewhere between 1910 and 1915. Betty told us one time that Ralph Vineyard was born in that house,
Oh, really?
So you can almost date it accordingly,
Sure.
But they
So the
originally,
Vineyard family lived there.
yeah. So that was actually one of their homes. And then I think maybe one of the Browns maybe bought it from them. I'm not really sure which one, and then we bought it. My folks bought it from them. It's like 80 acres, and they, in addition, later on, bought another 20 acres. So we had about 100 acres out there.
I see.
Mostly just beef cattle and putting up hay. That was we weren't really into crop farming or anything like that.
One of the things we like to do is connect the dots on Marshfield Old School Times. We all are kind of a big old spider web.
We are.
Or a quilt
A
when
family.
it comes to Webster County and
Yeah.
connections. But so when you mentioned the Browns, so there's connections there with my grandmother's family on the Fraker side. My grandmother, Irene Thomas, she was a Thomas.
Right.
And her sister, my Aunt Maisie Thomas, married Uncle Isaac Brown.
Okay.
And they lived on 38
Yep.
in the old house
Yep.
there,
Right where
Isaac
it's
and Maisie
yep,
lived.
absolutely.
And their son Byron ended up with that
Yeah,
place
yeah,
in
yeah.
later years.
Yeah.
Of course, Byron and my dad are first cousins.
Right.
But then, there's a connection. There's always a
It's
connection.
amazing.
That's why
Yeah.
it's neat to kind
Yeah.
of talk about it.
Well, you mentioned we're going to kind of talk, some music and stuff like that too. But in my musical history, probably so my mom, my sister, and I, we sang for a lot of funerals. The first funeral I ever sang at was Mag Brown's. She was our neighbor, and
Yeah.
she used to babysit us. So I was only like 6 years old.
I think she was a sister-in-law to my great
Right,
aunt Maisie.
right.
Something
Yeah.
like that.
So that was kind of one of those deals. Your cousin Gary Fraker and I was talking about a year or so before he passed, and it was just he asked me. He said, "How many funerals do you think you've sang at in your lifetime?" I go, "I don't know, maybe a couple hundred." He goes, "No," he said, "It's got to be
More than
closer
that.
to four or 500."
Is that
Because I mean, whether it was Arthur's or Fraker's or Marsh's over at Rogersville, it just seemed like we always, Dad,
Yeah.
and also with my dad, also was a part-time country preacher,
Mm-hmm.
and between a lot of
Now, he
times,
played an instrument, didn't he? Or
no,
no,
Dad,
he never played. He
uh,
just preached. Okay.
yeah, it
I
was
don't know why I was thinking he played.
it was funny. Dad said I mean, he loved music and would have given anything to play like a guitar or something like that. Mom would try to teach him sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd always joke. He'd say, "Well, I'm confident in the fact that if they gave me a guitar and put me in jail and said, when you can play this song, we'll let you out." He said, "I'd just tell him, just go ahead and throw the key away."
Never happened.
Because it just, that just wasn't his
Yeah.
thing.
Did he preach at Timber Ridge?
He did.
That's what I thought.
Originally, the first church he pastored was Cash Chapel
Yeah.
over on FF.
Mm-hmm.
Portland,
almost to
Portland area.
Yeah.
And he was there for, I think, almost 8 years, and then was at Timber Ridge for probably at least 10 years. And then the last church he pastored was Mission Home out on W.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So you started school at Marshfield,
Mm-hmm.
and tell us a little bit about that, and then of course now, did you meet Sherry early in school in elementary, or was that later on?
That was actually my senior year.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Go ahead and talk about elementary,
So-
your friends, and
so yeah,
all the things that you did growing up.
it's kind of funny. I always tell people that, and I know probably I think a lot of the kids that were in like your class, like when you guys went to kindergarten, it was in the basement of the Kinderhook Library.
That's exactly right.
If I'm not mistaken.
I was not in that class with your sister,
Okay.
though.
Okay.
We lived in Lebanon for 3 years. My
Okay.
dad was with Kraft. He was a field service agent. And so we moved down there when I was 2.5 or 3, and then came back to Marshfield, and I started first grade at Marshfield.
Right.
So I missed that
Missed that
kindergarten
one.
because there's a picture.
Yeah.
You've seen
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
All my classmates, but I'm
yeah.
not in it. But of course, your sister's in it, Brenda, and a lot of our friends. But
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, it was kind of funny because when I went to kindergarten, that wasn't an option. I mean, that location wasn't. So I went to kindergarten in the back of the McNeely Ford tractor building.
I remember that.
They had two classrooms back there. It was so which that building's still there. I mean, that's post-game pizza right now. I mean, it was
Right.
It was the sports shop was there for a bit, and O'Reilly was there.
That's right.
But it's just kind of funny. I'll tell people a lot of times, like literally, we would come in of a morning, and they'd usually have like a small Ford tractor in the showroom. It might have been like a 2000 Ford or something like that. But we would walk past the tractor and past the parts counter to go back to our classrooms. I mean, that's a pretty small town. Whenever you're basically, that's your class.
Something I thought of too. Again, the connections. So, Pat Bosch, our good friend, your mom or your sister's good friend, classmate of Brenda and mine. Pat and I went to kindergarten together in Lebanon.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, because they lived way out at like Faulkner's Hill or somewhere even further than that, somewhere Conway area. And kindergarten back then was not part of the 12-year.
It wasn't mandatory
program,
right?
So you could choose where you wanted to go, and her mother was working in Lebanon or some reason, so she decided to go. They took her to Lebanon. Of course, it was about the same distance.
Yeah.
So anyway, we have. Pat Bosch and I are the only two that went 13 years together,
right,
in our class. Whereas the rest of our classmates are a bunch of them. So anyway.
Well, and to go along with that, I'm kind of proud to say, my best friend in kindergarten was one of your relations, Alan Thomas. He and I met. We buddied up just immediately, and I'm always proud to say, that Alan and I have been best friends for the basically almost my whole life.
Right,
and who could have a better best friend than Al Thomas? And Al always maintains, it's so funny because he'll say, of course I ran track and was always, fairly fast, I guess, because I was a little bit
of an athlete.
Yeah. Well, I tried hard. Had to try hard. But Al will tell you, he said, yep, he said that was a point in my life where I was the second fastest guy in our class. He said, and that it never got any better from there on out, You
were the fastest.
Yeah.
Well, and then Alan had the competition of having two brothers that were both tremendous athletes.
Oh, absolutely. But it's one of those deals too. Alan, especially kind of in his career, when he became, he was teaching math, and was coach over at Rogersville. I always knew one thing about Alan. Not that Craig and Brent weren't as well, but Alan was such a student of the game that he, intellectually knew a lot about it,
Mm-hmm.
and was a great coach,
Yeah.
a great
Yeah.
teacher,
Right. Yeah.
So that was just right up his alley,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
combination. But of course, and it's kind of funny because I still have a few. Elizabeth Hobson
Mm-hmm.
was actually in the class, and so she was. We've been friends
Right.
as well. I think there was maybe about 3 or 4 of us that really since kindergarten had been friends and still are.
Right. Right.
Uh, and that's kind of back to that
It is.
small
It
town
is.
community and everything like that too. Of course, went all through high school and everything here. Actually, this building that we're in right now was actually where I went to junior high.
Right.
I think were you guys the first ones over at the new? It was
We were the
77.
second class to graduate.
Okay,
But we were in the
76.
first.
Right,
We were the first year to go over
right,
there, but
right,
we were juniors.
right. Okay,
76
right.
was.
76 was,
Yeah. Yeah.
and of course that's whenever like Sherry, my wife, that's when
Uh-huh.
her brother Mike was in class
Yep.
of 76.
That's
So
right. You're ahead of me.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those deals. Sherry and uh, I I don't guess we didn't ever. She's 2 years younger than me, so she like I said, we weren't really in that same phase of schooling
Mm-hmm.
at that time, until especially like would have gotten into high school. But by that time, she had actually moved. Her mother had gotten remarried, and they'd moved to Florida for a little while. And then
Okay.
when they came back, they actually moved to Mansfield. So, kind of a mutual friend of ours. So I was like a senior. Sherry would have been a sophomore, and so Nancy Chancellor would have, her and Sherry were best friends and
Mm-hmm.
had stayed best friends. So they were having like a student council meeting or something like that, and our choir was supposed to sing for that conference or whatever. And so I was getting ready to leave. We'd gotten done, and Nancy comes up. She goes, "Oh, I've got someone I want you to meet." And so um, I had just broken up with my girlfriend the night before, so I wasn't in a very good mood. I told Sherry, I said, "You probably thought I was kind of a jerk." She goes, "You were." But no, I mean, so we've been together. We've been married for 34 years, 14th
Wow.
of July,
Awesome.
but have actually been together for a little over 40. We dated for like 9 years.
Oh man. Wow.
So we've been together for a long time.
Definitely made in heaven then. Wasn't
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it was
You
definitely.
made sure, didn't you?
Yeah,
That's great.
absolutely.
Well, during school, let's talk a little bit about your music because, as you mentioned, your mother,
Mm-hmm.
your sister, you guys sang a lot of funerals.
Yeah.
When did you more or less pick up the guitar?
Right.
And I mean, you were singing at funerals, but probably weren't playing
Right,
yet.
right.
When
Yeah.
did you really learn to play the guitar and realize that this is something you might want to do the rest of your life?
So once again, I was in sports,
Uh-huh.
and as most boys, I mean, I really, it's like music for me was kind of like this secondary thing.
You were in choir, I'm
Right,
sure, in
I was in,
band.
yeah, and I'm sure you've talked about with a lot of your guests. I mean, Marshfield was always blessed with D. Lewis,
Absolutely.
Richard McGeehee,
Mhm.
especially
Carol Wilson.
and that's who basically I was in band, high school or school band until like my freshman year, and then that kind of for me was like a conflict with sports
Oh, yeah.
because so that's kind of why I stepped out of that, but I was still able to be in choir, and so it was kind of especially during our school years, there was such a kind of a friendly rivalry with Willard. They had a great music program as well, and so I mean, going back to district contests and stuff
Right.
like that, you was constantly seeing who had the most points, and stuff
Right.
like that. I remember Richard McGee. He had these. You would actually have to do a sight reading test during contest, and so he had these. I want to say they were like a Methodist hymnal. And I mean, I knew a lot of hymns,
Sure.
in my lifetime, and I would literally go through the index to see if there was one song in there that I knew. And I don't know where he got these books, and they might even been like a Presbyterian, but I mean, it was just there were songs that no one had heard, and he would
Oh,
have
really?
us just go through every day prior to contest and sight read these songs that you obviously didn't know. And I
That's
never
interesting.
I never was a great sight reader, so he was smart enough to set me between Teddy Hinman and Doug Hartwell. And
Yeah.
they were strong,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so I could kind of lean on them. But then when we get to contests, you'd open up these closed folders and you'd pull this the sheet music out, and it was almost like to us it was like reading ABCs
Yeah.
because we were so overtrained for it. that, and they would just astonish like the
You
judges.
give Richard credit for that.
Oh, absolutely,
That's awesome.
absolutely. He
That's
was
great to hear.
he was
I'd
like
love to get him on sometime.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
I
he'd
think
be great.
that'd be awesome. But so no, I think my music kind of, it was like it was always just this kind of thing that was there.
Right.
Um, I kind of referenced Justin Bertaldi
Right.
earlier. We used to have our of course we were just down the road. The Bertaldis lived right on the corner on West 38, kind of past where the locker plant's at, right there. So
Right.
we were really really close. And of course we kind of grew up visiting, with Johnny and Jana, and Justin came along later.
They
but-
were all playing bluegrass by
Yes,
then, right?
yeah.
All kids.
but it was kind of one of those deals. We would have like a music party, and what that basically consisted of, I mean, like the Hobsons would be there, but I mean, there might be 30 or 40 people crammed in one little house, and they'd just be playing music, and literally it would be all night. I remember,
that
I remember a
right?
couple times we were at Jack and Judy's house, and I remember it probably looked like some sort of a massacre scene, because I mean there's kids laying all over the floor, and people were just kind of slumped over in their chairs, and Judy be in making breakfast because they literally had played
All night.
all night long.
Really?
So that was kind of a cool thing. And
That
I think
is neat.
I think that was something that probably even like with my mom's family and people of an older generation, they kind of had to create their own entertainment.
Mhm.
And like I said, just like with my mom's family, they almost had, with 7 siblings plus her dad. I mean, they would have like their own. They just play music
Oh, I know.
to
Yeah.
entertain
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Or they listen to radio.
Yeah.
So it was
A
just
lot of
kind of
families did back then.
yeah. I mean, well, your
the Rose
case,
family.
absolutely.
They sang gospel music.
Oh,
They
yeah.
didn't play much. Well, they had, some could play the piano, but I never knew of many of them ever playing instruments much. But boy, they could sing.
But even speaking, and I thought of them last night. I was just kind of thinking about stuff to talk about. But I remember Webster County used to have like a monthly gospel singing, and it was just they would go to a different church.
What was the name? What was the name? The Kinzer.
There was a Kinzer
singers.
the Kinzer group.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was made up of like Don and Leona
Uh-huh.
and I'm trying to think who all else was in that group. Gilbert and Katie Stone. They were actually from Fordland. But I mean, there was just this, but it was just always a big, and they would sing by shape notes.
Oh yeah.
And that was a talent. That was something that
It was.
there used to be people that would go around and teach,
Mhm.
give classes on how to sing by shape notes, and people probably don't really know what that is.
My great grandfather, Cale
yeah.
Cale's dad, Uncle Grandpa Sam, he
Yes.
sang that way. He
Yes.
couldn't see, and he
Yeah.
sang that
Yeah.
way, and taught my mother and taught Don, and,
Yeah.
and all that. That whole family how to sing that way. I want to show you this picture. So, on the promo when we introduced Keith on Facebook, most of you probably saw that, but if you didn't, we showed this picture on there of these boys singing in school, and I wanted to just show that a minute. This is a really, really cool picture. I mean, I just think it's really neat. And then Neva Schroeder mentioned that Bill took that. Of course, Wayne Schroeder's in there.
Yeah,
Boy, the
yeah.
light's kind of not really good. But Wayne took that picture, or Bill took that picture. But you might mention, Keith, if you remember who they are.
Yeah. So, where'd it go?
Sorry, that was not a very good way
No,
to do
no
it.
worries.
It's the glare, I think.
Okay, so on the far left, the shorter guy, that is Kim Dill and Troy Kittrell, Matt Heinrich, Wayne Schroeder, David DePriest, myself, Mark Lawley, Andy Myers, and then Scott Pope sitting at the piano.
There's a lot of talent there.
Absolutely.
Those boys could
I mean,
sing.
oh, I'm telling you. And so that would have been the first year of Carol Wilson's team.
Right.
So this
What do
was
they call that? Double quartet?
they
Or
just called it barbershop quartet.
barbershop. Okay.
So this was the first year that was kind of
Right.
introduced into
Right.
that.
You would have been a junior, senior?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, junior. I would have been a junior because Scott Pope was a senior that year. He was the only senior in that picture. But I mean, if you think, like I said, about the talent that's in there, I mean, so Mark Lawley has been a
Tremendous
music director.
yeah.
He was at Drury. He's been at Willard. He's been
Evangel
New Covenant Academy.
Covenant, yeah.
I mean, he's been several different places. I think about every time. I think he's maybe in retirement this time, but he's retired several times
he gets
since.
piano lessons because the Focal Song
Right.
boys go to him, and
Yeah,
of course,
yeah.
talented
Oh,
family as
absolutely.
well.
I think he was actually the music director for the Springfield Boys Choir.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
just outstanding work there that Mark's done, and then of course Wayne Schroeder. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
basically performed on Broadway and
Yeah,
still does.
yeah, absolutely.
And David DePriest still
Mm-hmm.
very involved, like Springfield Little Theater, Marshfield
Mm-hmm.
Community
Right.
Theater.
Church choir.
Yep, church choir. So yeah, there was, and of course Scott. I think he still plays with some bands. He played with M Doc
He did.
for a
Yep.
bit. And so we were for such a small community, been pretty blessed
Yeah.
with a, a pretty high level of
No
talent.
question about that.
Yeah.
So then you were doing that in school. Then when did you start kind of playing garage band stuff?
So I went to college for a couple years. Went to Missouri Southern in
Mm-hmm.
Joplin. Played a couple years of football, and then I decided that uh, it wasn't really probably going to go any further than that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't regret doing it. It
Yeah.
was fun, but like I said, music had always been around. And so then after I kind of quit, It's almost like I felt like I kind of had lost myself, and so this music was always still a thing. I thought, well, maybe I could, at that time, uh, when I was in college, I roomed with Rob Aarons. Of course, I'd been friends with Rob since probably third grade,
Mm-hmm.
and we were rooming together in college. And he was already playing with the band Ryder. Actually, was probably one of the founders of that group,
Drummer.
drummer. Yeah, and
Yeah, had you already learned to play the guitar by then?
not really.
Okay.
It was kind of one of those deals where I was just, I really, I think a couple times Mom would try to show me, and then I would just,
Yeah.
just didn't really have the
Mm-hmm.
have the drive to do it at the time, and that really didn't come along. Really, I mean, I was playing. I got to where I was probably just, and mostly when I did start with Ryder, I was just basically like the backup singer or harmony singer.
Right.
Darren Skinner was the lead singer that they had at the time. So really, the band Ryder consisted of Rob Aarons, uh, Brian and Steve Burks, Huck Hyde,
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Mayberry, and Darren Skinner. Darren was basically like the lead vocalist and for the most part the only vocalist.
Yeah.
And then that was a deal where I went and auditioned with them, to sing, just to help Darren out and sing back up. Like I said, I don't think at that time I sang any
Yeah.
lead whatsoever, but that was kind of my background too. I mean, I never really until, golly, probably the late '80s. I still don't maybe even to this day fancy myself as a great lead singer, because my whole background, Mom had me singing like tenor or
Yeah.
harmony,
Yeah.
so I always sang harmony, and so I feel like that's
You've
actually,
got a great voice, though.
well,
I mean,
thank
you
you.
do. You really do.
I just feel like I'm a better as a supporting part of the supporting
I don't know
cast than I
about
than
that.
I am
Yeah.
as the lead singer, but or maybe that's my comfort zone.
Mhm. So you and Sherry weren't married yet.
No,
Okay.
no,
But
we were still
you
dating.
were dating.
Yeah,
This was
yeah,
the
because
mid '80s.
yeah, mid '80s. So about '85 is when I started kind of playing with them, and and so then those guys kind of started teaching me to play because I mean I was obviously showing some interest. Still wasn't very proficient at it. Mostly just the singing. Really never really got to where I was playing enough to accompany myself really comfortably until I started playing, or until was actually, we kind of did that so they were kind of, so when I started in '85, they were actually kind of almost on the end of the group. They kind of dispersed and
Starting their families. And
right,
stuff, so.
right. So I was only with them for maybe a couple of years, or if even that long. And then I think it was probably around 1986, because I wasn't with Ryder anymore. Um, your brother Mike and Keith Phelps was forming the group, the Midwest Messengers, and so Keith knew me just working for Show Me. He knew me through Dad,
Sure.
and he just we went out one day and went fishing, and we went to the lake, and he's like, hey, he said, me and Mike are talking about getting a group together, a gospel group,
Yeah.
basically like a quartet, and he goes, would you be interested in singing? And I go, I don't know, yeah, I guess, and,
Yeah.
and he said, well, I go, well, do you want me to sing? I said, I'm not really in especially in that atmosphere, I didn't really consider myself would be a good quartet tenor singer, even though I sang tenor in choir. Still wasn't quite. I mean, you still had your sopranos that took
Yeah.
care of that really
Yeah.
high part, you know. And so I said, be more like a baritone. And he's like, going, well, I'm going to sing baritone. And he said, so you'd be the lead singer. And I'm like, okay. You know, like I said, once
Yeah.
again, this is
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of me stepping
Yeah.
out from my
Yeah.
comfort zone. And so yeah, so I was with them, and so that's when I just then on a few songs I would start playing acoustic guitar,
Yeah.
you know, and that's when I really kind of felt like the drive to start playing enough to almost accompany myself,
Uh-huh.
you know, and so I went from there, and we kind of went a different direction, and then Keith and I was with a group, Airborne, which was a trio. Alan Taylor was in that group, Kim uh, Clift.
Mhm.
Um, and Chris Bryant came along later, which is the bass player for Belford now. So he and I've actually
Oh
been,
yeah.
I've known him and played music with him since he was 18. So I
Uh-huh.
mean we've been around. So
Yeah.
so really that kind of
That's neat.
that whole kind of gospel. We were kind of more like what was considered like Christian country,
Yeah.
because on certain events we would actually have Bob Ashley from Seymour sit in and play steel guitar and
Yeah.
stuff like that. You know, so it's kind of it's just kind of been an evolution. It's not really um, also kind of during that time, you know, I guess we all kind of have those 15 minutes of fame. So all in my, yeah, so mine was maybe 10 minutes, but anyway, so kind of during that time, like in 1987, so this is kind of that contrast between, I think I was still with the Messengers, but that maybe was kind of why I kind of stepped out of that realm for a moment, because in 87, I started this whole kind of talent contest uh, trip, and actually was competing in talent shows like in Branson. And later on in 1987, I was actually on, this is my little 15 minutes of fame. I was actually on the show You Can Be a Star in Nashville, which at that time was the original talent show that was kind of a televised talent show was Star Search in Los Angeles, and Ed McMahon
Yep. I
was the
remember that.
was host
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
So they had the TNN network had a country version of that. Jim Ed Brown was the host,
Mhm.
and so I was on that show in 1987.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that.
So it was quite the process just to
Yeah.
be on, because
Yeah.
back then you would actually do like, and of course it was like I said, it was on the TNN network,
Uh-huh.
you know. So you would make up like a cassette demo tape of like two songs, and you'd have to cut a song down to, you know, uh, like maybe a minute and a half or something like that. There was a guy that helped me at least make my demo that actually is Dave Painter, which is actually the lead guitar player for the current Ozark Mountain
Mhm.
Daredevils.
Mhm.
Dave
Yep.
and I,
I know
like
that.
I said, he was actually my kind of guitar teacher. had started taking some guitar
I
lessons, and
see.
so he helped me make this demo up,
Yeah.
and we drop it in the mail, send it down. And of course, you know, it's just so different than now, where like you would have known about stuff, you know, instantaneous.
Right.
I'm waiting like months, and I get a letter from them inviting me to come down and do a video audition. And so I go down, and this is kind of a funny story. I go down there and meet with the production or general manager for that show, and his name was Don DeShell. And you know, I'm pretty nervous because I mean, you know, this was actually, so where we did the video audition was in the back of the current Grand Ole Opry. So like where there was Opryland,
Right.
so it wasn't
Right.
part of the Ryman, but it's
Right.
like so like if you go now to the Grand Ole
The new
Opry,
Grand Ole
yeah,
Opry,
so
yeah.
that's where the studios were at.
At
So
least it wasn't the back of the McNeely Ford building.
it wasn't. It wasn't. I've stepped up a little bit at this point, you know. But I would have done it
Still in
anyway.
the back
Yeah,
room.
that's right. So we're in the studios. Actually, so the studios where we did the audition were actually the studios where they would film Hee Haw.
Oh, really?
So that was kind of, you know, that's kind of a deal for me,
This
you
is a
know.
good story. See, I don't remember all this.
Yeah.
I may have at the time, but I
Yeah.
don't remember this.
So I go down, and so literally what they would do is like your demo tape, you had to have a blank demo tape of what you had sent down, and you would actually, so then they would film you, which was kind of, so you almost had to perform like there was a crowd out there during this video audition, and there was nobody in the room but you.
Oh.
So you're
shit.
trying to, you know,
Make it seem like there
show that you had some stage presence, you know. So that was a little weird, but anyway. So kind of in my little pre-video interview, I mean, I'm, you know, like, you know, he could probably tell I was nervous. Like I said, I was probably, so at that point I was maybe 24 or 25, you know.
Yeah.
And so he introduces himself as Don DeShell. He said, "Well, now it says here on your bio that you're from Marshfield, Missouri." And I'm like, "Well, yeah." I said, "It's just it's just a small town, kind of a wide spot in the road between, you know, Springfield and Branson, or it's in the Branson." Of course, at that time, Branson was starting to get some
Oh yeah,
notoriety,
pretty big, yeah.
and so he's sitting there. He's Marshfield, and he goes, "Is that between Stratford and Conway?" And I look at him like,
Wow.
"What?"
Yeah.
And he just starts laughing. He said, "I went to high school at Hillcrest
Oh
in
my
Springfield."
goodness. Huh.
And so, it was just
Yeah.
kind of, so that definitely kind
That broke the ice.
of broke the ice,
That's great. Yeah.
So I did that. I mean, everything, of course, that was my first time going to Nashville too. And so we kind
Yeah.
of took in all the sights,
Yeah.
and so just
Still
a little,
weren't married.
still weren't
Okay.
married.
Yeah.
So about another 2 or 3 months go by, I get another letter, and they invited me to be on the show.
Awesome. Yeah.
So when it all came down, I mean, I really, I didn't win, obviously, when I was on the show, because you could actually, I think there was, I don't remember who the actual record company was, but they actually let you at least record and release one song, So anyway, it's kind of one of those deals where to get on the show, they would listen to 1,000 demos. Then they would pick 500 demos to come down and do the video audition, and then they would pick 125 people to be on the show. So I
Wow.
felt like it was a pretty big accomplishment
Yeah.
just to be on the show.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, I got to meet a lot of people. Like the day I was on, like Tom T. Hall was one of the judges.
Yeah.
Tandy Rice, who was Jerry Clower's manager, was one of the judges. And then Gene Kennedy from Doorknob Records was one of the judges. And so I remember them coming up to me. I mean, especially Gene Kennedy after the show. I mean, they're really nice. I mean, most of the people are just really, really cool. And Gene told me, he said, "Hey, I just want to tell you, you've got a good voice." But he said, "You just don't have a voice that right now is what Nashville's looking for to sell records."
Yeah.
Because this was during the Dwight Yoakam,
Yeah.
Randy, people that had like a really, really unique voice.
Right.
And I was pretty mainstream. I mean, I grew up, I remember my mom at night, she had like I want to say it was maybe a Curtis Mathis stereo, one of the big console
Yeah.
stereos, and she'd put a stack of albums on there, and just one after the other. That's what you listened to going to bed.
Right.
And it was like Jim Reeves and Ray Price and these really smooth,
Really smooth.
and that was kind of, I guess, what I don't know if I necessarily modeled after it, but I
Right.
mean, you kind of,
But it was not, you'd say pure country sound, but it
Right.
was definitely
very refined.
pre
Yeah.
pre Red Dirt or Fast.
Yeah,
Eddie.
yeah.
I was thinking about that as you mentioned even the gospel era there. It seems like we go through these trends in music, and it really does lead our culture down certain paths. The 80s,
Mm-hmm.
the big 80s,
Mhm.
and we came through Watergate and came through all the inflation of the Carter
Right.
years and all of that,
Right.
and here we've got a new America, the new
Mhm.
shining city on the
Sure,
hill,
sure,
right?
sure.
And what a better way to introduce a new type of music for church.
Mm-hmm.
We had hymns prior to that.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely.
here comes gospel,
Contemporary
gospel,
gospel.
and the drums,
Right,
and
right.
which really was the forerunner of what we have today in
Yeah.
church.
Oh, sure.
I mean, it really was. It was fast beat,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it almost kind of came from the southern churches,
Oh,
the
sure,
black
sure,
churches,
sure.
that the roots of that music
Mhm.
was sort of were
And I think a lot of people,
you had to get up and start. Well, when you start doing this, well, then you start dancing a little.
right,
That we didn't
Yep.
do that in church
Right,
before. Then.
right, right.
But that introduced that new era.
I mean, you can almost, a lot of people, and I've watched some documentaries in regard to music, that most say American made music is basically based off of either jazz, which was kind of an American style, jazz, blues,
Blues.
and gospel.
Rock and roll was from the blues. We
Yeah,
know that.
yeah. So I mean, and obviously country was kind of almost like a combination of a
yeah.
lot of that, but a lot of so those the grassroots of that style of music that and you'll almost always hear, especially in country music, well, I grew up singing in church with my mom and dad or whatever.
Yeah.
Alan Jackson always is
Yeah.
very adamant about that. Carrie Underwood, some of the more current singers. But it's also kind of funny too. that with everyone kind of having that same general background, it's kind of that also helps them to kind of relate, to one
It
another
does.
in whatever kind of music that you're doing.
Yeah.
Sherry and I were actually down in Branson a couple weeks ago, and we were at the landing and we were walking through, and of course they've got outdoor speakers, and I'm a little biased about what good music is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, have a pretty wide spectrum of what music I listen to. I'll listen to bluegrass, or I'll listen to jazz, or I'll
Mm-hmm.
listen to blues a lot, or country. And when I say country, I'm kind of more '90s country, which was kind of almost like if someone said, okay, if you could only listen to one group for the rest of your life, who would that be? For me personally, it would be the Eagles.
Yeah.
Now, but when they first
Yeah.
came out, they were considered country.
They
That was
were.
a genre that they
Country
were
rock.
country rock.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they just had such a wide span of what they could and
Yeah.
was capable of doing. So we're at the landing, we're walking, and the music that's playing on these outdoor speakers is basically all from mid to late '70s to mid '90s. It's all this stuff that I'm walking through. I'm like, there's the Doobie Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
There's Jackson Brown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
That's your era.
yeah, but yet
Yeah.
it's almost like how it's still embraced by so many
It is.
generations.
It is.
Now
It's-
that was
it's-
such a monumental era of music.
That's right.
I mean,
Huge.
you just can't get around it.
Uh-uh.
I mean,
Well, I think it broke all these barriers. It set a whole new tone for music,
Mhm.
and it's probably like the big bands did in the 20s
Right.
or the 30s. I mean,
Right.
it set a whole new tone for music.
Right.
It replaced the hillbilly music that
Sure.
people knew in the rural Missouri, and it replaced, whatever they played, classical or
Mhm.
something, or
Mhm.
hymns even. And it, the pop. Think about the pop music at the turn of the century. Things like Chattanooga Choo Choo.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that would have been
Yeah.
pop music
Right.
in the 19 teens and the
Right.
tens.
Right.
And the old sheet music that they they had for piano
Mhm.
and all that,
Mhm.
the ragtime
Oh, yeah.
and all that.
Yeah.
And so, but that all kind of changed when the big band started
Sure.
in the 40s.
Sure. And
Got through the depression.
That was-
we have those shifts, and then it sets the tone for many years.
I think another little. I was just thinking about things that happened, like maybe an aha moment for me. I was a freshman in high school. Brenda had went off to school, was going to SBU, music major.
By the way, you just have the one sister,
Yeah,
Brenda. Just
Brenda.
you and Brenda.
Uh-huh.
You guys were close growing up.
Yeah,
I
and
know
still
you
are.
were.
Still
I know
are.
you are.
Yeah.
She'd bring you along to things that we did, and
I was kind of
you were the tag along.
I was.
Kid
I
brother.
was. I was
You're
the.
the mascot.
I was the mascot. I was the honorary little baby brother because she had 9 friends. They called themselves the Divine Nine.
Uh-huh.
And
My classmates.
yeah, oh yeah, and even like Pat Bosch, you would say, or Leanne Barnes or something, would go, "Where's Keith at?" And Brenda's like, "I didn't bring him this time," So I was kind of like the honorary little brother to a lot of these girls didn't have brothers or didn't
Right.
have younger siblings.
You'd have been 8th grade when we were seniors.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course, I thought it was a great gig. I was kind of the envy of a lot of my friends
Oh, yeah.
because like I'd get to go to like say a high school basketball game, and then as everybody's leaving, I'm leaving with Leanne, with
All the senior
all the
girls.
senior like all the hot senior girls, and all the guys are almost kind of like going,
Some of them were cheerleaders.
yeah, oh yeah, Kathy Cunningham,
Mm-hmm.
Shelly Ash. I mean all these friends that my sister had,
Right.
and I was the little token little brother, and I'm just like, bye guys, So no, it was a good gig for me in that time,
Absolutely. It's
But
cool.
yeah, it's kind of so when
So
Brenda
you-
went to college,
Yeah, your aha moment.
so I'm a freshman in high school, and everybody's trying to figure out their themselves, I
Right,
guess would be a
right.
better way. The music I was listening to at that time, like I said, once again, would have been the Eagles. I think that was the first 8-track I ever got. It's the Eagles. I think then I had the Doobie Brothers' Greatest Hits.
Mhm.
But I was also getting into I got the Ted Nugent Double Live Gonzo album. So I mean, those were kind of like my go-to groups at the time. And so Brenda calls Mom and she says, "I want you guys to come up. They're having a special concert here at the university, and I want you guys to come up for it." and she wasn't a part of it, but it was just she wanted to come up and visit.
SBU.
Yeah, SBU. Yeah, and so I'm like, I don't want to go up there. It
Yeah.
was like during the week too, and I'm just like, I don't want to hear some lame concert. Well, it ended up being the Springfield Symphony or St. Louis Symphony Orchestra.
Mhm.
Big orchestra. And so I'm just, and I think I went wherever I think it might have been maybe in their performing arts building or whatever, but I remember I went like to the top and sat by myself because I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
And they start playing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just like, I literally told my sister afterwards. I mean, it's just like, and now I really started getting into it. I mean, it was just so dynamic and it had such levels and just so
Right.
much going on. I said, I'm not kidding you. I said, I could almost see colors when they were playing.
Wow.
It was just had such this
Impact.
an impact, like this washing over. And I'm like, wow, I need to open my mind and my ears up.
Yeah.
And that's really when I started listening to a lot more stuff,
That's
a
cool.
lot different types of music,
That's really neat.
So, that was just kind of one of those moments where you're like,
Right.
okay,
Absolutely.
it kind of changed.
So you went from the garage band writer, you went into the gospel deal
Mhm.
with, and then you were on the talent show,
Mhm.
and then you come out, and then when did you and Cher get married?
We got married July 14th, 1990.
1990.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was still with the group Airborne at that point.
Okay.
And probably because we didn't have Madison yet. Madison was born in 95.
Okay.
So I was with that group for probably another not quite 5 years, because Sherry was pregnant with Madison when the band kind of dissolved. But we had a lot of young families. Kim Clift, I mean, she was in the group. She had like 3 kids,
Mhm.
which we'd take the kids with us, and it just
Right.
everyone's kind of
Getting busy.
Alan and Angie Taylor, they had 2 kids, and so you get busy with your kids and priorities change,
Right.
So that's kind of when that kind of came to an end. Kind of in that whole deal, it was kind of one more little story. There was a group out of Branson called Jubilation. They were a Christian country group, trio. They were made up. Bruce Haynes actually had played many years with the Presleys. Bob Ashley, steel guitar and lead player, had been with the Texans. Benny Woods he was a tenor singer from the Texans. Their baritone singer was Gene Reasoner. Gene had actually been the bass player for Grandpa Jones. So they were just made up of a lot of kind of a little super group in a way, especially of the Branson talent. They were, like I said, they were this group called Jubilation. They later changed their name to White River, and they had a recording deal with Homeland Records in Nashville. And like I said, I'd known these guys ever since, just kind of through mutual
Right.
gospel and country gospel events. I'd gotten really close with them. They'd just gotten this record deal, and so they were really starting to travel a lot, nationwide. And at that time, I was actually working I was landscaping, kind of freelance landscaping with James River Nursery in Springfield. And they'd kind of give me their little small jobs, which was ideal,
Yeah.
And so I was kind of working for myself, and I get a phone call from Gene Reasoner, and Gene goes, "Hey, man, what are you going to be doing for like the next month?" And I go, "Well, hopefully landscaping." And he's like, "Listen," he said, "Bruce, their lead singer," he said, "Bruce had to have an emergency appendectomy." He said his appendix burst. And he said he's going to be down for a while, and this is like our busiest time of the year.
Wow.
He's like, "Would you go and be our lead singer for a month?" And I'm like, "Sure."
Wow.
So
That's kinda cool.
yeah, it was really for me it was a
Takes
big
a lot
deal.
of ability to be that versatile.
Well,
just on pick up and go and do that and fill in the.
It even kind of
pretty big
amazed
shoes.
them because, like I said, I literally knew every song that they had ever done, and especially as a new group. I mean, they'd get like a new release, and I would just wear this cassette out, because they were really good.
Yeah.
And so he called me on a Wednesday, and they were actually going to play another big area group, the New Horizons from Lebanon,
Mhm.
would have a big kind of gospel homecoming
I
gospel
remember
singer.
that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there might be
Danny, what's his name?
Danny Rhodes.
Danny Rhodes. Yeah.
And there might be 5,000 people there.
Huh.
So Gene's like, "Okay, well, we don't have," so they had that coming up. He called me on a Wednesday. This is coming up on Saturday. and actually Airborne was supposed to be one of the earlier kind of local groups that was playing at that same event. So they come down on their bus, getting ready to go on stage that night. And so I went on the bus, and for 30 minutes, we would do a verse and chorus of each song that we were going to perform in about 3 hours. Mm. And so they would just be like, I can't believe that you know all these songs, you know? And I'm like, well, I kind of do.
A God thing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And so we go on and we, you know, and we do the show. And they're still kind of just wow. And I'm like going, well, I said, I'm a fan. I'm not a stalker. But anyway, so the next week, they said, okay, we're going to meet up. Our first show was like, it was on a Saturday night, but it was, once again, we did not rehearse with each other, because some of them had like full-time jobs as well, or jobs.
Right.
And so, I meet them, me and Sherry, like I said, I don't think we were married yet. I mean, we're just really close to being married, but, so me and Sherry and my mom and dad, our next show is the Albert E. Brumley singing in Springdale, Arkansas. So we all drive down. And so once again, we went to the bus and just kind of ran through everything again. Well, that was 12,000 people. Yeah. At that rodeo arena. Cause I mean,
my mom and dad went every year.
Oh yeah. It was a big deal, you know? So we went on, I think we went on right after the Henson family and right before the Kingsmen or something like that. So, I mean, we're talking in that realm of music that they were big hitters.
Nationwide. Yeah. I mean, all across the nation.
And so we did that show, and someone asked me after it's over, I said, man, you didn't even seem nervous. I said, well, really? I said, with, you know, in a big show like that, you're only playing to 50 people, because you're on with the lights and everything. You don't see past maybe the first 3 or 4 rows. You see these old dark heads out there, but you don't really silhouettes, but you don't. So really, I didn't get too nervous. But we actually, so I was gone for a week, you know, and then we come back in just maybe for a couple of days. We ended up playing the Ohio State Fair, which is one of the 5 largest fairs in the United States.
Wow.
That was one of those deals where we start to get off the bus, and I had my guitar, and there's a guy standing at the bus door, and he's like, you need to set that down. And I'm kind of looking around like, what? Well, they were union roadies, so you couldn't even carry your guitar off the bus, you know. So I'm like, okay, you know. So it was kind of a deal for me. I was like, I wasn't really used to that, you know.
You want the tip though when you're done?
No. I mean, they literally set everything up, but it wasn't always that way. But, yeah. So then we actually ended up singing went from there to Staples, Minnesota. There was another big concert there, and then we ended up the last leg of that tour. We actually sang in Winkler, Manitoba, Canada, at a big outdoor amphitheater. Wow. There's like 25.
How long did you sing with this group?
Just for like a month.
That was all in a month?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So I mean, you would just literally, it was kind of one of those deals, and like I said, for me it was like exciting and fun, because you know, you get on the bus and the bus, you notice the bus stop, and you're like, where are we at? You know, you always hear those stories.
Just like the big stars.
We're in Lexington, Kentucky right now. We're really on the way to like Dothan, Alabama or something like that, you know. But so we ended up like in Winkler, Manitoba, Canada, and I was all excited because I guess I really didn't understand the geographics of it. I was like, all right, we're going to Canada. It's going to be really pretty and all this stuff. Well, it's basically like being in Nebraska where we were at, because we were in the plains, you know, and they were cutting wheat actually when we were there. Yeah. But there was like 25,000 people there, and once again, it didn't really affect you, because you're actually singing like some of the stuff like what I did later, like playing up here at the Jay's Nest, you know, when Sally had that place. Those are almost scarier moments when you're sitting in front of 25 people, and they're like from me to you, basically.
They all know you.
And they know you, and it's such a stripped down. If you're just accompanying yourself.
When you're singing to 25,000, are you singing to the front row?
Pretty much.
I mean, you're just pretty much. That's your peripheral vision would just be, focused on that. I mean, you wouldn't have that. I mean,
that was something Mom taught us when we were kids too, like to get over nerves. Like if you're singing at a church or something like that, she goes, "You're singing to the back wall." Yeah. So that if you're nervous and you don't want to make eye contact, you're looking right over the top of someone's head at the back wall, and you're looking around, but yet you're not making eye contact. She said that way you won't get as nervous. You know? But that's one of those little tips Mom gave us back in the day.
That's really cool. I honestly did not know that about you. I didn't realize you got to do the national tour thing.
Yeah, that was.
So did the other guy come back then?
He did. It was so funny. I think the first week after I got back in town. Sherry and I were living in a little. We were married at that time, I guess. So we were living a little. Howard Harmon had some duplexes out here by the high school,
Yep.
and of course they're at the edge of town, but still almost in the country,
Right.
and so uh, I was laying there in bed, and of course, literally that white noise from the bus engine. I was sleeping in the top bunk, right up against the roof, I guess because I was little enough to get up in that bunk. But I was laying there that first night after we got back. We'd been out for a week, and I'm flopping around and rolling around in the bed. And Sherry's like, "What is wrong with you?" And I go, "I think I'm gonna have to pull my truck up here by the bedroom window and just let it run all night
Yeah,
because
it's too quiet.
it's just too quiet,
That's
But
funny.
it's almost like that part I really took to that really well,
Sure, sure.
But
That's really awesome. That is. You're not going to believe that it's like 2 minutes till 2, right?
wow, we've
Yeah,
blown.
I-
I didn't think I'd have anything to say.
It goes by that quick.
Well, let's talk about Reunion Fest.
Yeah,
real
let's
quick.
do. Let's do. So I want to talk about Bell Ford.
Okay.
Because once you got back, I guess you raised Madison. You had family time. You probably didn't play music for a while, maybe, or
It was just kind of
off and on.
hit and miss,
Then when did you really start kind of playing with, I guess, the James River Band then first?
So that would have been, I want to say, 2012. It was almost,
I think so
I think it
too.
was right before.
Before Reunion Fest.
Right.
Actually, 2012 was our first summer.
Right,
So it might
right.
have been 2011.
Yeah, something like
Or
that.
that spring, maybe.
Yeah,
even.
yeah, I think it was that
Yeah,
spring.
yeah.
Because I think it was like maybe April or May or
So
something.
talk for, and we can run over. I mean, we're not
Okay,
on a
okay.
time frame with YouTube, so
So
talk about that. What happened with that event?
So it's kind of one of those deals. I mean, I really, really wasn't even aware. Dennis Beck was kind of spearheading this event, kind of prior to the Reunion Fest.
And I think Roger Replogle was instrumental in.
He was.
He was wanting to help Dennis kind of get established. And,
Yes.
I mean, help him promote his music.
Right,
Let's put it
right.
that way.
So I think it was either a year or two before that.
Mhm.
Roger was promoting this event. It was kind of like a James River reunion
Yep.
concert,
Right.
and they had that at the Gilloys.
Mhm.
Obviously, I wasn't part of that or anything, but
That was in 11 because that was my first year in the house.
okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Dennis and I think John Ward was
Yep.
kind of part of that. But Dennis, it was kind of an opportunity to kind of showcase some of Dennis's new original music,
Right.
along with and using kind of
Is that when Randall and Larry Lee were going to perform there?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was kind of the whole start of kind of James Rip the revival of James River Band, and so they did that, and then of course a couple of years removed, they were going to do this. I think Roger was kind of still. Dennis had that was the Time Flies album, like
Right.
your intro.
Yeah. Right.
So he's kind of promoting that, and so they decided they were going to do this coming home giving back concert, and it's kind of to do two things, kind of promote Dennis's music, but it's also a fundraiser because everyone has always talked about how much of an influence D. Lewis has been on their musical
Right.
career and everything like that, and it's kind of in honor of him as well.
Right.
To buy new band uniforms for
That's right.
for the
They were
high school.
The new high
Yeah.
school band. Yeah.
So, of course, Randall Channing was actually a part of that. It was kind of funny, and like I said, this was kind of all unbeknownst to me. Julie and Gary Alexander. Just to back up a bit, I had maybe started playing a little bit of solo stuff. Sally Knapp used to have the Jay's Nest here in
That's right.
Marshfield,
The old
and she
Sheelan's building.
yeah, and she would have an open mic night. So I wasn't playing any music, and I guess I was kind of having a little musical itch, and so I just remember one night I told Sherry that I said I think I'm going to go up to this open mic night thing, and she's like, "Oh, okay." So we went up there, and there wasn't nobody. I mean, so I was it,
Yeah.
And I was doing stuff, songs, like kind of like what's a reflection of Belford now. I was doing I did a few James Taylor songs. I did a couple Eagles songs.
Soft rock. So
Yeah. Kind of, I always look at it as that singer-songwriter era.
Right.
Yacht rock, I guess, is
Yeah,
another way they refer to it
yeah,
now.
yeah.
But, so it was one of those deals where I just started doing that. I remember Julie, of course, Julie and I had sang together in, at that time we were attending First Baptist Church in Marshfield, and so we were on both the regular choir, and then also they kind of had a praise group that would sing, and so she and I'd sang together with that. Well, so I think I don't know if I posted it on Facebook or Sherry posted something about just a picture of singing at the open mic night at the Jay's Nest. And so Julie comes up. I mean, this has been like a couple weeks later. She comes up. She goes, "Can I sing a song with you?" And I'm like, "Sure." So we actually go back out in the alley behind there, and we just sang through "Yesterday" by the Beatles real quick, and we do that. That was almost the start of where Belfort is now. But anyway, so back to the James River story. They reached out to me and said, "Hey, Dennis is going to be coming back for this concert, and he's going to be kind of the lead singer and everything. And we don't have anyone to sing lead, but so would you care to just come and rehearse with us,
Yeah.
and just to kind of." I'm like, "Sure,"
Yeah.
So that was really kind of one of those deals where I had no aspirations of being involved in the event, but I was just
Right.
going to come and play rhythm guitar and do like scratch vocals like you would in the
Right.
studio for the group. And so once again, that really wasn't, I wasn't even planning on being part of the show or the concert. And so I guess they had sent back some practice tapes of what we were doing, and Dennis is like, he needs to be involved in
Yeah.
this. And so when Dennis comes back, I just came that day or two whenever he was right before the concert, and we're talking, and I don't have any instruments, and I'm just kind of sitting there. But I wanted to meet Dennis. I knew, as being a younger person, because I think Dennis graduated in 75.
Mhm.
Okay. So I knew who Dennis was, but
Yeah.
I had never really,
Right.
so I wanted to meet him. And so he's like, "Dude, you're going to be involved in this." And I'm like, "Oh, no, I don't need to." He goes, "No, you are." So I ended up singing like maybe 3 or 4 lead songs, but mostly harmony, which kind of, like I said, I always felt like that's more my forte, because that's
Right.
what I learned first, was singing harmony. And so then that kind of, after that was over with, I think that's when the conversation about Reunion Fest.
Right.
How did Reunion Fest, how did that even come up?
Well, that's exactly how it happened. Because of the Galois thing,
Mhm.
Roger Eplogo called me. I
Mhm.
was in Jeff City. I'd just been up there a short time,
Mm-hmm.
and said, "Hey, we want to do this. I want to do this fundraiser. I want to do a fundraiser back in Springfield. And he'd already, I think, talked to the Galois Theater about it, and wanting to see if I could help promote it from down here
Right.
in Marshfield."
Right.
And of course, obviously I was excited about it. I said, "Sure, be happy to do that."
Mhm.
So I actually hooked him up with an organization that I'd gotten acquainted with in Jeff City, dealing with underprivileged children,
Mhm.
or
Autistic, yeah,
autistic children, and that kind of thing. I can't remember the name of it now, but anyway, Roger, that was near and dear to his heart.
Sure.
He and Janet had worked with that organization,
Mm-hmm.
an organization like that out
Mhm.
in California, and so anyway, we made those connections, and they ended up with a really nice donation to help
Mhm.
toward the fundraising effort. And then, of course, Marshfield turned out in big numbers to
Right.
attend that,
Right.
and it was a great night.
Yeah.
And so that kind of sparked the energy to go, man, we need to get the old James River Band back together more often.
Right, right, right.
Our friends, and
Right.
Randall Chowning, the
Sure.
former Ozark Mountain Daredevil, and I think Larry Lee, and
Mhm.
Daredevil original member.
Mm-hmm.
They were acquainted with some of the group. Roger got acquainted with them.
Mm-hmm.
Janie Chowning, Randall's wife,
Sure.
was friends with like Leslie Thomas and
Mhm.
various people.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, it all came together. And so then whenever we decided to do the D. Lewis thing,
Mhm.
they asked me to be the MC. I
Mhm.
introduced the band there, and it was maybe 6 months after that other event or something like
Mhm.
that, and the momentum was building
Yeah.
to do something. It happened to be 2012 happened to be mine and your sister's. I think it was 35th class reunion,
Mhm.
and we were planning to do something.
Right.
I think we had missed our 30th or something. It seemed like we did a
Mhm.
25, and then we all got together, and it was just kind of a brainstorming
Right.
idea that I came up with. Well, we ought to get the James River Band to play, and then the class of, I believe it was 82. Well, did they get together the year before for 76? Did they kind of get together and play for them or something?
Well, they kind of did. They played I think a deal, I want to say, or
Somewhere.
a place called the Chicken Coop,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is out by Republic,
Yes.
and almost by
Yes.
uh,
I went to that
Wilson's
as well.
Creek.
Yeah.
There's a little
Yes.
building. It was actually originally
Right.
a chicken coop.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat little
Yeah.
venue.
Yeah.
But anyway, they had already started talking about doing this.
Right.
But there was another class, and it might have been it might have been 82 because
Mm-hmm.
it would have been their 30th
Mm-hmm.
that wanted to do something, and
Mm-hmm.
we kind of, and they, a lot of that age group,
Right.
which was right a
Right.
year behind
Yeah.
you, knew a lot of our age group.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we put this first reunion fest together, and we wanted to do it around the 4th when people came home, and it
Right.
all just kind of fell into place. I think we did it maybe on the night before, on the 3rd or
Mm-hmm.
something,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how it all kind of started. And then
Yeah.
it was very successful. I sold ads in the little booklets and put together booklets, and there was not an alumni banquet anymore. That had
Right.
kind
Right.
of
That'd
gone
be good.
by the wayside
Sure.
a year or two prior. So it was a way to promote various classes getting
Mm-hmm.
together, and it took off. And I had some great help. Becky Hyder,
Oh yeah.
Julie Lamb helped
Mm-hmm.
me. There was several that helped.
Right.
Those were just the ones that stayed with me. But many of our classmates
Mm-hmm.
that first year, of course, helped put it together. But that's how it started.
I just remember that first year, our setup and everything like
Yeah.
that. How it was.
We didn't have the stage. We
Didn't
brought two trailers.
Two trailers. I think. Maybe. I mean, I thought Dale.
Dale Fraker brought
Brought
one,
one,
and we had another one.
Yeah, I remember getting set up on that.
Yeah.
And obviously that kind of progressed just even
It did.
to the stage that's there now and
Yeah,
everything
it
too.
did.
Because I remember, I think it was maybe the second year. Mark West from Down Home
Yes, Productions.
Productions.
Yeah. Craig Bridwell knew Mark
knew
pretty
Mark.
well, and we
and
connected with him.
and Micah, I can't remember the guy. He's up from Rogersville, but ran sound. Or,
Mhm.
I think that was year two. I remember that was the year. I think that by the time we got everything loaded out, it was like 3:30 a.m. or something that
Yes,
morning.
yes,
You know,
yes. And then your old group, the Writer,
Yeah.
got back together.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think
Yep.
because of Reunion Fest,
it was.
right?
It
Yeah.
was. It was.
So you guys played. I mean, we had 2 or 3, 4 years there that
Yeah.
pretty much all local groups,
So
reunion groups.
I've actually played with three different groups
Yes.
at either, well, one time it was Ryder and James River the same year,
Right.
but either at various times. So I played with three different
Right.
groups at a reunion fest at
Right.
some point in
Yeah.
time.
We've had a great run.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be the 13th year.
That's amazing.
And this year, the first group to play will be the Jets. That's the high school band that my grandson Emmett Teal plays the drums.
And they're very good.
They are good. uh, Logan, help me with their names. I'll forget somebody, but
White River or White Oak.
no, as far as
Oh,
the
the
Jets, Jimmy, what's his last name? Jimmy Sanders, Wood, Zane Wood, and then Travis Moore, Andy Moore's son, the four, and Emmett Teal. They're the Jets, and they've been playing now for a couple of years together, and they're really good. And so we're if you haven't heard them play, be here at 5 o'clock on June the 29th, and hear them play the first band, and then the second band will be the White Oak Revival, and that's Andy and Tony and all those guys, Lane.
Another very talented group.
Very talented. They
Yeah.
play red dirt country and a little bit fast country. They're really good. They're playing tonight at Seymour at the Rockin' Festival over there.
I think I saw that on
Rockin'
Facebook.
Barbecue Festival.
And a lot of original music. I mean, like almost,
Yes, they write their own
almost
music.
all. Yeah,
And
very
they're-
talented.
Yeah, they are. And then the third group to play will be Belford, and you might tell people who your members are now.
So our main members would be, say, Julie Alexander, Joey Hyde, Gary Alexander, myself, Lauren Morris, Chris Bryant, Rocky Stevens. Rocky's not going to be playing with us this year, so we're going to have. He's just not going to make it for this particular show, but Jody Cottingham is going to be playing drums. Jody's, basically founding member of Papa Green Shoes. Used to be with the group Tripwire.
Been around Springfield.
Been around
all his
Springfield a
life,
long
even
time.
as a child,
Yeah,
because his dad
yeah,
played.
was a musician.
Yeah.
So we're kind of trying to get some of the rust knocked off to where hopefully we won't embarrass ourselves. I told that's the main thing. It's just we don't want to embarrass ourselves. So.
And you guys have been playing some bigger events, like you played the Landing at Branson, you played the fair.
Probably
haven't you?
we've done the
Springfield Fair.
small stage at the fair.
Yeah.
Gene Hoke has kind of always been one kind of putting a talent together for the DeLong plumbing stage. So we've played that at least 3 times. Gene actually heard us at a small kind of a private concert for Donco 3 Concrete. We played like a Christmas
Right.
event for them, and so that's kind of where Gene heard us. And so we've probably two of the biggest events we've played at. We played at Big Cedar Lodge for their 4th of July celebration a few years ago, and then also their Labor Day celebration.
Yeah.
So that was pretty big production.
Yeah.
You know, Johnny does it up pretty big.
Absolutely.
You know, so.
But that kind of kept you from playing Reunion Fest a year or two.
It did because I think
because you had
Yep.
those bigger events,
Yep.
which was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So anyway, you haven't played for a couple of years, and you're going to be back this year, and we're
Yeah.
glad. We're happy
Yeah.
because we kind of think of your group as being sort of
Kind of
the reunion group,
kind of
almost
part
a
of it.
homecoming for
Yeah,
you guys.
yeah, absolutely.
And then, of course, the last band to play will be the Dirty Saints.
Oh.
They play all over Southwest
These guys are
Missouri. They play
monsters.
the casinos in Oklahoma.
Yeah,
Jeff Ward, tremendous lead guitar player,
Absolutely.
Marshfield grad, 1984. And then Kelly Bowman's on the drums. Kelly's a Marshfield grad, 1987. And these guys are excited to get to play this year, I think.
Jeff and I
even though
actually-
they could be playing somewhere making
Oh,
big money,
yeah.
they're glad to come home and play. And of course, a lot of Kelly's classmates will be here. I'm sorry, Jeff's classmates,
Jeff's.
because it's their
It's his
40th
40th, yeah.
anniversary. So we're real excited. We think we'll have a great turnout.
Mhm.
The admission's $15, and all that does, believe me, is pay the bills. But we try to do that and have a great time, and we hope that you can come this
Absolutely.
year if you can. The class of '74 will be having their 50th reunion, and they're going to have a great event. I know they've done a lot of promoting work promoting it with their classmates. They'll be in the depot building over here, the old band hall, and then of course many of them will be coming out to the field later. And the class of '84 again will be having a gathering too under a tent. And so we encourage any other classes that would like to gather, just bring your tent or call me and say, hey, we want to gather. Just pay your admission and come in, and there'll be a spot for you there, and love to have you do that. So, well, Keith, what's in the future for you?
Not sure. Musically,
What do you do for?
I'm actually a construction manager.
Yeah.
Work for James River Church. I'm actually their construction manager. I've actually been in construction management now at some level or another for probably 25 years.
Yeah.
Worked for O'Reilly Auto Parts, building, as a project manager,
Right.
building stores all over the United States, distribution centers. So,
Yeah.
maybe one of these days I'll get to retire. I
And
don't know.
you're hitting 60, aren't you?
61.
Yeah,
I'm
61.
61. I'll be 62 in January.
Yeah.
So
It doesn't seem possible.
I know.
Just doesn't seem possible.
Except I feel it every morning.
Yeah, you've got a son-in-law now.
I do. Yeah, Josh Barnhart.
Yeah.
And so that's all going.
All going great. Sherry's enjoying life.
She is. Yeah, she's definitely my compass. My, she
Your
kind of
partner.
she did. Yeah, absolutely.
Partnerships are tough when you've got a good partner at home.
Yeah.
That's your partner.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Some businesses get
Sure.
partners and do all this stuff, but boy, your spouse having a
Oh,
good
yeah.
partner, that's the key to life.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely.
Well, we run a little bit over. It's
Like I said,
2:15.
I didn't-
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
I know.
It's so much fun, and I really appreciate it. We're capturing history. Someday his grandchildren and great grandchildren maybe will see this, and they'll go, "Wow, that's my great granddad."
I didn't know he
And
did that.
so that's why we're doing it, and we appreciate everybody watching. Welcome to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I don't know much about that, but Logan tells me that's kind of neat if you can. We've got up close to 200 subscribers now, I think, and I think our largest show, I believe, is the one when we had Jim Jones, the former assessor, on back in January. I think we're over 600 views now.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty fun, and we're going to continue. And I can tell you that we'll have someone next Saturday. We plan to. And the Saturday of Reunion Fest, 2 weeks from today, we have a really cool show planned.
Oh, wow.
You don't want to miss that one. You're going to really enjoy that show. That's all I'm going to tell you right now. So, Keith, thank you.
Thank you,
All
Lyndall.
right, we'll see you in
Appreciate
2
it.
weeks. if
All
not
right,
before.
absolutely.
All right.